Welcome, everybody, to Veil of Sound, another podcast interview, this time with Jan Hoffmann of the incredible Long Distance Calling from Germany, who are about to release their new album Eraser, or have released their album Eraser when you're seeing that. Their second album during the pandemic.
Exactly.
And hopefully the first they can tour with once again. Welcome, Jan, and thank you for your time.
Hi. So yeah, like Sebastian said, I'm Jan from Long Distance Calling, and I'm glad to be here.
You're playing bass, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get right into it, because Eraser is a very interesting and very broad album, so we probably should talk about it in depth a little more. So what first came to mind when I've listened to Eraser the first time, is it like the spiritual successor of the quote that you put on there on the last album with Agent Smith, that humanity is a virus and they, like Mr. Smith from The Matrix, are the cure, and Eraser is what happens when humanity is about to do what they do right now?
I think you're probably right. So I wish I could say it was a long-term plan, but it wasn't. But I think both albums are linked to each other, even though they don't sound very similar, even though they have the same studio and a mixing engineer and stuff like that. So I think they are pretty different, but they are linked to each other because both have this concept, both deal with humanity in a way, but now from a totally different perspective. And that was interesting. And that's also why the album sounds much more natural than the last one. Even though it's on the same team, we did everything exactly the same, but we didn't use any samples on this album. And How Do We Want to Live was pretty packed with samples and vocal samples and synthy sounds. And this time we really wanted to do the real deal and record like in the 70s, but with a sound from today. And that's important to us, that it's always state of the art. And also we like when the new album is different from the last one always. So that's more interesting for us and the people. And a little bit we can do what we want. And because expectation is always something difficult in any aspect, I guess. So we like to surprise.
Yeah, it's something completely different, where How Do You Want to Live was very clean, very meticulously planned. This one is more rough, it's heavier, it's darker.
Yeah.
And, it's a good contrast, even though the idea from How Do We Want to Live like continues over to this new album.
Mm-hmm.
How was it playing with synths or without synths, with real strings, with real woodwinds for the first time? Was that a new challenge for you?
Well, we recorded the other instruments after we wrote and we recorded the song. So, and this came together in the end, but we had a friend who helped us to simulate the other instruments. So this was done on the computer, and afterwards they were played by real people in the studio. So it was something that we never did before, I think. But the regular songs were written like in the beginning of the band, and this was pretty cool because there were no synthy stuff or something like that. So we just wrote the songs like we used to do before. So this was pretty easy. And then afterwards we added the other stuff like saxophone and woodwinds and strings, like I said. So, but this all came on top after the main songs were done.
Did you, from the get-go, had in mind to include real strings, no samples, everything?
Yeah. So we knew we wanted to have some additional instruments, but no electronic instruments. So this was the only plan that we had. But then time after time, we found the right sounds for it. And also, if you know Peter and the Wolf, and stuff like that. So they also use classical instruments, and we try to put them into the music in a nice way, because what we really don't like is this symphonic orchestra metal mix stuff. So
Yeah.
this is this is difficult to do right, but I think we managed to implement it in a nice and smooth way,
Yeah.
and it doesn't take away too much from the band. So it's just an additional element and different colors and moods, and this was the plan. So
Yeah.
because if you use too much of it, it's overload, and I think that's not good.
Yeah, that's not really very long distance calling then.
Yeah.
Did you learn from the experience you had with Stummfilm and also your Seeds and Sounds tour with real strings? Did that come in handy for this new record, or was it something you were quite used to because you used synths and samples before?
I think the latter one. So I think we're pretty much used to it right now. So it wasn't a big deal. Like the most difficult stuff was to turn the musical idea into notes and to orchestrate it for the people who played. But on the other hand, it was a pretty easy process, I would say.
Okay. And transferring what you did on the album to a live stage, how do you feel going into the next tour with two albums basically, which are very different from each other? And how do you want to try to incorporate and to combine those two albums on your next tour? Yeah.
We're not sure yet. Maybe we do blocks for the album, or we mix it, because we have a very good sound guy. And I think maybe it's more interesting to mix it, but we're not sure yet. Like we have to try it out. But yeah, but we will focus more on the new record. But of course, we will play songs from the last album, because they proved to be really cool live songs. And on the last tour that we could finally play after postponing it 3 times, I think we played almost the whole album, and all the songs work well live. And I'm really, really curious about the new songs, because, like you said, they're much more heavy, and that's also very quiet stuff. So I think it's the most diverse album. So I think we just have to try what really works live, and to see what happens then. But we already played Giants Leaving on the last shows, and this song works really, really well live. So, and I think Camilla will also work really good. So let's see what we can do.
Yeah. For the new album, you don't have a track with vocals on it this time, like you had on the previous albums. Was that a conscious decision, or did it just feel right to not have any vocals on this album?
Yeah, it just felt right. So it was a decision. So it's a mix of it, I guess. Because like I said, on the last album, we had so many vocal samples and other sounds. So this time we just wanted to give a voice to the animals,
Yeah.
with the songs. And I think that's better, because there's no distraction than if you have vocals or you have lyrics. In a way, it's always a distraction from the music a bit, and this time we wanted to focus totally on the music.
Yeah, and you have a kind of standout track, which has no vocals, but it has a saxophone in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, when I first listened to Sloth, it really stood out. And after listening to the album a couple of times, it's still a very standout track. So, yeah, is that your kind of like vocal track, your standout track this time, your diamond on this album?
I think you're right. Like for me personally, it's one of my favorite songs on the album, because it's something we haven't done before. And when we started writing the Sloth song, we thought about how could it sound, and we didn't want to do the easy way and do a doom metal song. So we decided what can we do, but we knew it must be very, very slow.
Yeah.
So, and then we started with this riff idea, and it turned out very quickly that there needs to be a saxophone in a way, and because it sounded very dark and slow and smooth. So that was it, and in the end, it turned out to be a standout track, like you said, something we haven't done before. And some people say it sounds like a lost Pink Floyd song or something,
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
which is a big compliment, I guess, for us.
Yeah. How did you choose the animals? Because sloths are, I don't know, they are quite weird one to choose compared to gorillas, um, birds, bees,
Yes.
especially. How did you come up with the list of animals to choose for?
Well, when we started to think about the concept, we just made a big list of endangered animals, and then we talked to Greenpeace. So we have a little cooperation with them, and then they helped us making the list over. So, and in the end, we just tried to have a very broad program for this album. So we tried to have something for every environment, like air and water and land. So, and of course, we had to take care that not every song is quick and heavy. So,
Yeah.
the sloth made it because we needed something slow, and the turtle was too boring. So
Okay.
we choose the sloth.
Yeah. Yeah, very wise choice in the end.
Yeah.
um, would you also say Sloth is kind of your favorite song, or do you have another favorite on the album?
If for me, I think it's Sloth Camila, because it's the song that contains everything that the band stands for, and also Giants Leaving, because that's also a standout because it's so short. It's like a regular song that we don't have very often. It's just 3 minutes 30 or something.
Yeah.
And it's pretty forward, and it's a great song to play live, and it's a bit uplifting from the mood, so it's not so dark. So maybe those three songs. So I would say the two most extreme songs on the album, and Camila, as it stands for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Camila was your first single release, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
How was the response to that coming from, especially from How Do We Want to Live? This raw sound, this heaviness coming back to the long distance calling sound.
The feedback was really good. So of course there are always some people who like the old stuff more, but that's with every record.
Yeah,
but in total it was really good, because I think especially our old fans like the rock side of the band.
Yeah.
So, and we have a lot of metal fans also. So, but I think it has also a very nice lead melody at the end, which is very typical for long distance calling. So it combines everything, and I think that's a good choice. And people really liked it, and I can't wait to play it live.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably very heavy live and
Yeah,
very intense.
I think it's a very good opener, maybe. Let's see.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Or a very good second song.
Yeah. In the past 2 years, you basically released three things.
Yeah.
You released 2 albums and 1 EP.
Yeah.
I think Janusz said jokingly that you released the EP to get some money for taxes and not to sit still for that long time. Were you from the beginning planning, like depending on how long the pandemic lasts, that you release an album, maybe an EP, or was it something you came up spontaneously as it was clearer that this was going to be a longer time?
It was pretty spontaneous, because we also did it in, I think, 2014 with the Nighthawk EP. We just took the chance between two contracts, because if you have a record label, they have the rights to exploit the music, which is a terrible term, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. And if when you are between two contracts, you are free to do whatever you do, but then of course you have to cover all the costs yourself and stuff like that. But it worked well with the Nighthawk EP, so we said, why not, before we sign a new contract or we resign or something, just let's do this EP, because also it wasn't just only a joke, because of course we also needed some money. So this was the perfect opportunity to do it then. So it was the best timing to do it. And we came up with the idea pretty quick. And I think it turned out really cool.
Yeah.
And so we had 3 releases within 2
2
years.
Yeah.
So we were really, really busy and creative
Yeah.
in that time.
Did the writing of the album already start after you finished the EP, or already before that?
No,
What
we
was the
just
plan back then?
we started right after the Ghost EP was released. I think we started in March or April 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Started writing and we finished short before Christmas. And then we had a 1-week break, and then I think Janosch started in the beginning of January with the drum recordings. So
Okay.
it was a very intense time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
But better than sitting still and
exactly.
having nothing to do.
Yeah.
Going back to the topics of your album, the death or the vanishing, maybe the erosion of animals, and your last track is about humanity. Was that like also an idea from the beginning that the last track should be about us as humans, or was that something that came when you finished all the animal tracks, that something felt you had to add something else about us?
No, I think this was there from the beginning, but funnily enough, Eraser was the last song we wrote. But the idea was there, I think, from the beginning, that we need to do something, some song about us humans as well, because we're one of the species, and on the other hand, we're the one species that's responsible, and that can take action or something like that. So we have 2 roles in this. We are also, if we go further this way, we are also endangered at some point, and on the other hand, we're the ones responsible and who can do something against it. So this just made sense.
Yeah, for sure. For the upcoming live tour, which I imagine there will be some at the start of next year, maybe at the end of this year, will you bring along the strings, the saxophone, or how do you plan on incorporating these new elements into your show then?
That's something we still have to talk about for the tour next year. It will be early next year, and no one knows what happens, which is
Yeah,
a bit
sure.
frightening again. But let's see, and keep fingers crossed. But for sure, there will be a special show next year, later next year, like a big special show that we will announce sometime, and there we will have the full program with strings and stuff like that. On the tour, we don't know yet. Let's see how we do this.
Yeah.
Not sure yet.
Yeah, it's a new experience then.
Yeah.
This album is a concept album. Your album before that was a concept album. Is your plan on doing like more the concept stuff, or maybe also like throwing out a EP with general ideas and not so interwoven themes, or is the concept side of things the main thing Long Distance Calling is focusing on for the next albums to come?
Some people don't believe, but we really don't know. We really start from scratch with each album, and I think that's better for us as a band, because we like if we don't know what happens. Because if we say now the next album should be another concept album, it's just unnecessary pressure, I think.
Sure, yeah.
If we get a great idea, maybe then it's a concept album again, and then we have a trilogy. But maybe we just do something completely different. So we don't think about that now. We just start. We always start and see what happens and where we're going. And the first song is always a bit like a direction for the album, and the first song for Eraser was Camila. So this was the starting point where we know, okay, this will probably be more heavy than the last one, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
So we just don't know.
So we can be very excited for the next stuff. How do you start writing an album? Because I can imagine that it's not always easy to create instrumental music with maybe a topic at hand. Do you start jamming stuff, or does someone come to the rehearsal and say, guys, I have an idea, listen to this, and then
it's both.
Okay.
It's both, actually. So sometimes somebody brings something, but I think most of the time we just play around and somebody starts playing something that comes to his mind at this moment, and we just jam. Like, that's how we always did, and I think that's the best way for us. But if somebody has an idea already in mind, of course, it makes sense to bring it to the rehearsal space, and we think about it. But sometimes, even if we have something up hand, we can't use it at that moment, and we use it later. But for example, for the Ghost EP, we really didn't have anything, and nobody believes it, because we announced it, we sold out the vinyl before we even recorded it. Which was a bit scary, but we know, we play together since such a long time, that there will be something coming out of us, and in the end it was really cool, but we really didn't have a single riff or anything.
Okay.
So, and we just start.
Yeah.
And that's what we always do.
Can imagine that being that's scary, that when you announce an EP and you have nothing, basically.
Exactly. So the night before, I didn't sleep really well. So it was what if, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. But it's also great seeing the support from your fans then, I guess, because everyone wanted to get the EP, and even though you had just released an album the year before, they was already hungry for new stuff.
Maybe they just trust us that we don't release anything that we don't want to release, because this would have been the consequence. If really nothing had come to our mind, we just had to say, sorry guys, we have to postpone it a bit, but fortunately it didn't happen. So, and then after we recorded this, we were already in this mode, what comes next? And this is always really cool.
Yeah,
if you have finished one thing and you're already, like, when we finish an album, normally it takes just a few weeks, a month, and then it's old for us and we start to think about the next step. It's always like that.
Yeah. And you also had the time to think about, because unfortunately,
there
was no real touring going on.
Exactly.
And how was that, not being able to go on tour, maybe having to postpone your tour again and again and again? Was that also a scary time for you as a musician?
Yeah, it was really scary, and it was not cool. Like, because you think about the whole concept, like, how long can we do it? Because as simple as that, you earn money with live shows. If you don't play live, there's no money. This was a pretty frustrating and scary time. So all we could do was writing new stuff and hope that it will finally work, and then we'll postpone it for the first time, the second time, the third time, and the 2 weeks before the tour that then finally happened last May. The 2 weeks before, I was so tense and nervous, because I thought something will happen again. Somebody is positive. I don't know. But then all the shows worked out, and it was a big relief.
Yeah, because even though knowing what you said, that you started the album last year, sometimes this kind of angst and uncertainty can felt a bit in Eraser, because you're saying that humanity is responsible for all this stuff happening, the species dying out, and we could see that in the past 2 years, like, unfolding rapidly, especially in the past few months, that humanity is really not that great at keeping itself alive, to be honest.
Exactly. And that's a point I guess why the album is more dark and heavy, because there was a lot frustration
Yeah, a
in
lot of
it. So
catharsis
yeah,
you
yeah,
had
yeah.
from that
So
album.
it's really like it is, but we also love melodies and stuff. So that's also very important. So we always try to keep the balance. But yeah, it felt a bit like the Boundless album maybe in the beginning, because that was the same feeling when we started writing Boundless. It was immediately clear that this will be a heavy album. So sometimes you're in this mood and you go through certain phases, and when you did this, maybe next time you want to try something different, and that keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, especially coming from the beautiful, like clean How Do We Want to Live, this is now a dark and gritty album,
Yeah.
which is great. And I think probably people gonna love it because it's so different, and it's also
Yeah, it's very
very
diverse. And for me,
yeah.
I always think when people ask me how it sounds, it's I think it sounds weird in a positive way, because there's so much stuff to discover and so many different things. And if you listen it with headphones, it's a lot going on. There's even every song has the sound of the animal in it, but you don't realize it immediately, because it sounds a bit different, or it's like I'm slowed down or whatever. But there's something in every song, like some texture of the animal as well. And that's all very, very different. And we tried from the beginning on with this album, like I said, to write the most diverse record with the heaviest stuff and the slowest stuff we've ever had, and see how far we can go. So that was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it for sure turned out great. Well, that's basically it. Thanks a lot, Jan, for your time
Thank you.
and answering these questions. And
Of
yeah,
course.
looking forward to see you guys on tour then next year.
Hopefully.
Yeah, have a great time.
You too.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.